Please give a warm welcome to the hosts of Alternate Ending.
Good. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Rob and Carrie from Alternate Ending.
And do you go by Mike or Michael?
Whatever. Michael's the usual, but it doesn't really matter.
All right. Michael it is.
Michael, I've got to get that poster on our wall here because first off, I just want to say congratulations on the film. And I've been doing a lot of soul searching on this thought. And with all due respect to Tenet and Mulan, they're not Paramount Pictures, so I think I can talk about them. Love and Monsters is the first official great blockbuster out.
That's
out
awesome.
yet?
Oh, not out. Coming October
soon.
16th.
In 2 days. If it's out, then you're watching it illegally, which is not good.
I laughed.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And I say blockbuster, and again, it's a 4-quadrant film. It cuts across all genres. And everybody can get something out of this. For me, I got this amazing dog here. I got the
every time I'm looking at you, I see it looks like you're holding his like from
good,
not making a noise.
I often get compared to Dylan O'Brien, so I will happily take that comparison. But you've got like in a more comedic role, you've got Dylan who's just who really just takes every comedic beat so well. You've got the romance factor. This movie has everything.
So Rob, I think you're Rob's super excited. So because he loved it so much, and so did I, that you're just jumping right in. But for those who haven't seen it, and everybody that will in 2 days, Michael, do you want to maybe go through a little bit about like what this movie's all about, a little bit of the premise? Yeah,
I mean, kind of what you guys are saying. It being a movie that really works for a lot of people really drew me to it. Not for that fact, but more just because of the movies I liked growing up and the films that I could have watched when I was 13 years old and be watching now and still love, like Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones or Back to the Future or Goonies or any of those where I feel like, you know, it's great when you're young and then you could still watch it with friends in your 20s and as a parent you watch it, or, you know, I think that was the trick for me of what I loved about the film, and not in a cheesy way. You know, I think that's the tricky part as well, is trying to do it so it's not heavy or anything like that, but it feels like it's got some kind of heart or substance more than just kind of gags, you know, and that was the big part for me that I liked about it overall, was that older adventure feeling that feels like it was like something I would have loved growing up, and then that it's got a bit more, you know, it's not trying to push any sort of message or bigger complex political idea or anything like that, but it's just, it has humanity to it and a heart that feels like it resonates, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think.
And it's a hero's journey, you know, in self-discovery. It really has everything. And it's funny, we have Carrie and I are married. We have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. After seeing it, we were like,
wait a minute. I think they could see this.
I feel like they could handle this movie and they would love it.
I've had a couple of people say, I watched it with my 7-year-old. And I'm like, isn't it a bit scary? I mean, I guess it just depends on the person. I remember growing up, I watched Jurassic Park when I was 9. Same. And that was just on the edge for me, you know. But I would say it's probably in the Jurassic Park space of being quite scary, but it's never a horror. It's not, it doesn't go that far, you know. Yeah. So it's really up to parents, you know, what they feel right with. I feel like a lot of Spielberg stuff, the heart and the subject matter is good, is positive and good in that way, you know, and it is scary. So it's whether you feel like your kids can handle the kind of a bit of the scares and creepiness, but the messaging and the tone of it and where the film takes you is sort of like a positive experience, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It falls in line with the movies that you're talking about that I have such nostalgia about, where it really is, you know, for those who will see it, you know, it's a love story. And it's an apocalyptic love story, which makes it just like, I mean, it's amazing. So the world around the characters is being overtaken by what we'll talk about a little bit later, the most amazing monsters that I've ever seen in my entire life. But that nevertheless, they're being taken over by monsters. So there's these two sort of groups that have formed, but they're separated. So one of the guys that's in there, like Rob was talking about earlier, played by Dylan O'Brien, lost his love in this apocalypse, and he wants to take this journey because nothing has been the same without her to get there. And so then it becomes like this path to get there, who he meets along the way, how he grows strength along the way in his trials and tribulations and grows confidence. So that's a little bit about it because I'm loving it as well too. That's a good description. But along the way, it is really all of those things. I think it, like you said, it crosses into so many different genres.
And you mentioned tone. You balance the tone just so perfectly because it could easily have been all a big joke. But there are some tender moments, certainly, that caused, as a parent myself, like some self-reflection. And they're just, it pulls on the heartstrings. It's got the romance aspect. Certainly have the adventure piece covered. But what I'm always looking for, regardless of this, whatever the subject matter of the film, to like really be top tier, is adding that humor aspect. Like, I think we all need to be able to laugh a little bit at ourselves or the situation.
It sort of glues it together, I find. With these types of movies, it sort of keeps your momentum going and keeps you kind of connected to it. The humor, I find, especially if it's not, there's some kind of gaggy jokes in the film, that are just sort of simple fun, but there's some other stuff, and a lot of it comes from Dylan, where it's more like charm than a joke. And there's just a lot of he's got a lot of charm to him that's like, it's funny to watch, but it's not like it's looking for a joke, and that I really love that stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that for a little bit. Is a lot of the humor, for me at least, was taken from not actually what was on the screen, but was the voiceover work that Dylan does.
Oh yeah.
When you're setting that up, are you picturing that in advance? Like how does one like know that that's going to land in your mind? You're shooting the scene. Are you playing the voiceover in your head, or how does that work out to know that that's going to land?
I guess it's it's on the page and it's in the script. So you visually reading it kind of go, yeah, I get it. Like I feel how that should sit. And then like most of it, it's sort of an evolutionary process as you're doing it. And in general, I was often more like just timing out of a space where the voiceover might be and knowing what tone you wanted to have that would be juxtaposing maybe something he was talking about. So it felt like had a humor to it or something. But it's relatively simple, to do. I think later on, then we revisited, we kind of changed lines and sort of played, me and Dylan and the editor and the writer sort of jumped around and played with trying different things and introducing different jokes. As the movie became what it was, there were certain things where we suddenly thought, actually, that's kind of funny, and maybe let's bring that in the voiceover earlier. So it's a bit of an organic thing as it developed and how much we should use it. There was times when it was going to be more, and then there were other times when it was less. There was a time when it was going to be like sort of some freeze frames of Joel through the film, like it does before the title of the movie at the beginning. It does it once. But there was going to be that where he then talks, but it just felt like maybe it was trying a bit hard, and it almost made me feel like, oh no, that's sort of like more Zombielandish or something.
You brought that
and
up,
I feel like this has got more heart. It doesn't need to be try and be sort of punchy or have gimmicks to do that. I think I like that it's not trying too hard. It's there's like an openness to it or something. So yeah, natural process.
Yeah. And you do have an all-star cast that you've pulled together for this. So you have Dylan O'Brien, but you also have, I almost couldn't watch your movie. Because you have Michael Rooker in this as well, who I was a huge Walking Dead fan. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still mad at him from that show. And Rob's like, you have to get over it. I'm like, I'm still mad. He's so good though. And in this.
Yeah, he's so great.
Oh gosh. Like he just
sort of has like the natural, he carries that sort of role so easily and naturally. Like when you see him, you go, I buy that this guy survived and he gets by and he's sort of solid and he knows everything about the world. And what's also nice is because actually he doesn't, there's not much action with him and that sort of thing. It's really more of just a mentor person along the way who just talks a lot, And so I just wanted to make sure it was someone that was like great to listen to and had like a good sort of flavor in who their character was. And then you sort of find a bit more fatherliness in him, like a bit more paternal thing compared to maybe how you first meet him. And there's a bit more of a standoffishness. As more you get to know him, the more you realize people are kind of closed a little bit in this world just to open up because they might lose people or you just don't know. So he's quite protective of Minnow. And you sort of slowly realize like he's quite he's like got a really warm heart and he's a lovely guy, you know.
Oh, I know.
Which he is in person, you know.
Is
really
he?
great
Oh,
guy.
is he?
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, because
he's the best. I mean, he's just so easygoing and relaxed. He's so different to how he is in films. You know, he hasn't got a hardness or anything like that. He's just so easygoing and really lovely.
Gosh. Well, and you pull them together. You also bring together Jessica Henwick in this as Amy. Was there anything sort of behind the casting of this? Like, how did you guys all, I guess, pull this crew together that seemed to work so well?
Well, I guess, you know, we knew like Dylan was on first. And so it was sort of what felt like it also worked with him. So we wanted to have someone that felt a little different and not too cliched of who we might cast for the role. We, you know, thought about many different people. And when she came to cast and actually did it with Dylan, they just had a good chemistry that didn't feel kind of schmaltzy or cheesy. And it didn't feel like too removed or stiff with each other. They could have, like when we weren't filming and during the scenes, if they improv stuff, they would just sort of have a laugh with each other and they could kind of give and back and push each other like they quite good, could be easily be friends, you know?
Yeah.
And sort of wanted that, especially obviously with like the scene in the car at the beginning, just wanted like a comfortability there that felt like, oh, this looks like a real relationship and there's sort of a funniness to them that worked. And then at the same time, it was nice to know with Jessica that she would have what it takes for the end of the film to be someone that's grown up a lot more than him, knows how to handle herself like physically to a degree and in terms of responsibility. Definitely we knew, you know, there was kind of a fair bit of action with her at the end. And that Jessica is like very capable with that sort of thing. We didn't want it to look like she was trained, you know, in like martial arts and things, but we did want her to know that we wouldn't be using a stunt double for like all that stuff, because if you watch those fight scenes and things with her, which are quite rough and quite real, you know, that's mostly her, you know, so it's nice to be able to see the actor and see what she's doing and not feel like you've got to cut around to like sell that it's her doing it, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
And one of the common threads actually between Love and Monsters and Jessica is Brian Duffield, the writer of the story. And we actually had a chance to sit down with Brian. He's obviously premiering his movie just Spontaneous, just premiered recently as well too. Great guy, great comedic chops.
Spontaneous looks great. I haven't seen it yet, but it looks awesome.
Oh,
so good.
It was so much.
Very good.
It was so much fun. You know, and I think Jessica also had starred in Underwater as well too. So some interesting ties there. Are you? Is that just coincidence, or are you all part of some sort of like, you know, group family here?
No, I think, I mean, the industry is just smaller than you realize. Yeah. But Brian Duffield's work is really great, and I've always like really respected what he's done, and also just the way he talks about things and all that. I really like. And Matt Robinson was really the person I worked with from when I joined on with the rewrites and where it went from there. So I must say I spent, you know, much more time focused with Matt on the rewrites and that sort of thing. But the idea originated from Brian, and like what the film was and its original direction and ideas was all from him. Yeah. And I think he's, you know, it's cool seeing him direct, because it feels like I think he's also a good fit there. You know, he really seems to know exactly what he's doing.
Well, you mentioned the industry being very small too, and I'm noticing a trend in the industry. It's been happening for some time where talented directors, storytellers such as yourselves are going from smaller independent films to these. You know, I consider this to be a massive scale film. Is there a learning curve there? How do you adapt to that? Like, how do you ladder up to that?
I mean, in a way, you know, for the 15 years or so, I've been trying to, you know, get to where I am now to a degree. You know, I'm constantly living in that space where I'm working on things that would be on this level and watching everything and kind of like learning to sort of like when that time comes is I feel like ready for it, you know. But, you know, it's in a way having a whole bunch more money is a lot easier, you know. It definitely, the jump up isn't a more complicated thing. I'd say the first film I made was harder because you're trying to make something good, but you just don't have what you need. And that's really frustrating. Whereas, you know, I think this film is still really ambitious for what the budget size it was, but it obviously is still, it's a very big jump for me. and working with really great people is awesome. And so I can't say there's a huge learning curve, except I guess on more of a responsibility level and multiple people that are involved and making sure everyone feels heard, and that, I'm trying to make the best movie I can, but I'm not out off on by myself, just making some decisions, and everyone's like, what are you doing? So there's a whole side to it there where it can be tough, and you hear terrible stories of where things go bad and the director's pulled out of the edit, or they fire him mid-shoot, or a person breaks down on this first big movie they're doing because they can't work with the studio, whatever it might be. So I kind of went in prepped for like, it may be really tough and I may hate this halfway through because I'm like, I've got like 8 people trying to make the movie with me or something,
right.
But it wasn't like that, and everyone's there, and there is a lot of other pressure of what people want out of the movie, being behind having made it and putting the money in to do it and all of that. But I loved the shooting of it and working with Dilla and the cast and working with crew that I was like really fortunate to work with, like Dan Henner, the production designer, was Peter Jackson's guy, who I'm a huge fan of, just in his work ethic and how he works with his crew, and all his behind the scenes were like half my film school for Lord of the Rings and stuff. Right. I just loved all that stuff. And Dan Henner's and all of that. And so when I spoke to him and I was like, I'm a huge fan. I feel like I sort of know you from all the behind the scenes. I hope that's not weird, but
he's like, it is.
And he just loved it. And I think like our personalities got on well. So it was really nice working with people like that. So it was just an awesome experience,
That's fantastic.
And like I say, the bigger part of it's not difficult. It's kind of, it's more fun, it's great. I guess it's just getting your head right and managing the expectations and the bigger conversations about it, and fortunately none of that went wrong for me, but I do know that it can get very tricky,
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you something that you can say, like, if this falls into the category of like what my dad used to tell me when I would be like, how much do you make every year? And he'd be like, that's not a question you ask.
You're not going to ask him how much Michael made.
How much
did you make? No. But the movie ended, and the first thing we looked at each other, this felt, we see a lot of movies and we review a lot of movies. This felt big. Like, this felt really big. So I don't know if you're allowed to say, but where does this fall in the budget category to make something so grand as this?
That's an interesting one, because I actually don't even know if I'm okay or not to talk about it. I'm pretty sure it would be public knowledge pretty soon, or I don't really know. But it
Brenda's probably like feverishly typing at you in the chat.
Right.
Yeah, I'll wait. I'll give it a few seconds, see if a message comes in. I don't know. I'm trying to think what a comparative movie size is. It's bigger than the first, my brain, Quiet Place, but, smaller than the second one. It's around like a budget level, I think, of something like District 9, I think is around there.
The Bug movie? The Bug movie, right? District
the Bug
9?
One, yeah. South African-wise, I know it. It's like a $30 million movie. Yeah. Which is I think is a fortunate place for me, like in being able to do it, because I think when you're like 50 or higher, the weight of it gets bigger and bigger of what people need out of it, and for a film like this that's got all these different locations, action, and all these creatures, trying to do something like that for like 20 or something, you're going to see that it's not getting there,
We would have never have guessed, and it's because it's all on screen. I mean, the locations alone, the interiors that you have while they're in the communes are just, it's so lived in, and I mean, the pipes are sweating, and I mean, it's fantastic.
It's great. I mean, I love all that stuff. I must say, I could spend so much time. The more money, the bigger the movie. That's where like I spend a lot of time, is like the design and the ideas and the world building stuff I really enjoy, So yeah.
Well, I won't steal Carrie's thunder, because I know there's a specific aspect of the design that she particularly was fond of.
You're talking about the monsters.
I'm talking about the monsters.
I got to talk about these monsters. So before going into it, again, our benchmark is how well does somebody make a monster? We're always like, oh, because sometimes it's a monster movie and then you see the monster and you're like, you're really let down. And so that first scene, when we see our first monster, we were really amped up. We're like, what's it going to be? What's it going to look like?
Here?
And this is not meant to come off in a negative way, but I have a high bar for monsters. I have a really high bar, an unusually high bar. So I was like, what's it going to be? Like, what's it going to be? How is it? And then as the curtain comes back, when he's still in the bunker, and the curtain comes back, and I was like, oh gosh, this is a good monster. It was like, it was
well, you don't really get a good look at that one, I must say. So I'm happy that you like that one a lot.
It was the scariest of your monsters, I think. I don't know.
We thought
it would be scary because it's dark. Yeah.
We thought it would be a tell but don't show, or like limited show. And
then it's not.
Nope, it's not. And usually people do that either to hide something or, to hide budget aspects. But nope, all of these monsters are full on display.
But they're like fantastical monsters.
They're well designed, well CGI'd as well.
That first sequence was interesting. I really, also with it being the first creature, like a lot of that was practical, except for the wides where you're seeing its limbs climb over and things like that. It was too complicated. Also just too expensive to do. But the head of it was operated and things like that. And so these little things and the slime coming out its mouth. And that part of it was all like a practical thing with a guy trying to puppet it and stuff, which I just thought was nice. I try to do it as much as possible, but it's really tricky when you've got big creatures that need to do things. It's so expensive and even though it would be really fun. And then often the results are really limiting. It's very tricky. But knowing that it was in the dark and stuff, I thought there's something nice about it feeling a little bit practical and almost a bit, not puppety, but that the film's not just going to like throw VFX at everything.
No, it felt like Alien. It felt like Alien-esque. So I was like, this is a real monster that's coming out. Yeah. And then I said, we actually had that same conversation around practical effects because I said, okay, now we step into the world and we meet your other monsters, who, by the way, my favorite is the snail. I don't want to be biased, but my favorite
Me
is the
too,
snail.
yeah, it's my favorite.
That's the sweetest snail. But anyway, so these monsters, while feeling, I don't know if fantastical is the word I want to use. Like they feel like they're of your dreams type monsters. They still felt like real. Or I don't know. I felt like you were using practical effects in them. So I said to Rob, I'm like, do you think that somehow they have like a giant monster? Because this doesn't feel like CGI to me.
I harken back to like we recently watched Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with the kids, and there's the ant, the cute. You were on a nostalgia binge there too. But there's the cute ant, and that's obviously
kind of a reference for this in a funny way.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. But so what goes into that? So were the in the world monsters, after those monsters, how did you bring those to life to feel so real?
You mean sort of like conceptually and then like executing
a little bit.
The whole sort of thing. I mean, the big thing for me, like getting into it, was to look at real creatures and insects and frogs. And like I pulled a whole bank of things personally that I just sat and like looked at things and thought, what's interesting? What do I feel like I haven't seen? But I also don't want to make sure it feels too alien. Like you, it's nice that they're tactile and tangible and like earthly, even though they kind of, mutated creatures. You sort of feel how they fit into each of their environments, and whether it's the frog in the mushy pool and stuff, it feels like that's where it lives. That's where it should be. It's not doesn't just like come around a corner. It's not these creatures that are just there for the movie to go, here's a creature, it's like their world was an important part for me, that they like integrate into it, into the living in the dirt, or the feeling of seeing the nests and the eggs and the things. And you think, well, I don't know where I might see the next creature or where it'll be, because the world sort of should feel like it's their habitat. Mm-hmm. So that was the main starting point for me, was, and then I actually look at lots of people's really great concept art. I go into ArtStation and things like that, and I just look for things where I think that's a good balance of not being too fantastical or too cartoony, but it seems like it's got character, or there's something going on there that's giving it like life, but it's not jokey or texturing, whatever it might be. I sort of, again, like build up things and then sort of brief everyone, and then get concept artists and the production designer involved when we're into it, of starting to sketch them up, and then back and forthing with the concept artist. A guy called Andrew Baker from New Zealand, who worked a lot with Weta and for over the years. He did, I'd say 80% of the designs were finalized by him, and that I worked with him, which was really cool. So he can definitely take a lot of ownership of being the person who's like, if you look at his drawings, I'll post them soon. Once more people have watched the movie, I've got those. I love those pieces of art and things. But they're quite close to where we ended up. And so there's that process to it, refining that. And then there's, then it's again with the VFX companies rebuilding them, and then they add a bit more character or do things. And then you're like, no, now you're making the eyes have too much character and it feels like it's too quirky. Something's right. I don't want it to just be this bug, but I don't want it to be going, and like thinking, like when you first see the frog, I was really on the edge there. The eye comes up and then the other eye, and then like looked at the one, and then they kind of that was on the edge for me. I was like, I don't want to go further, more cartoony than that, but it's nice. I like that charm, for this sort of movie. It's fun stuff, anyway, going off the path. But, we try to use a lot of practical stuff where we could. And if we didn't, it was like integrating real stuff on the set that felt like it would tie them into the environment of the world. And then in the VFX process, Matt Sloan was a VFX supervisor, and he's worked on some really awesome things. So again, it was a great person to work with. But we really focused on the integration again, like how it moves to it. That one, the siren is what it's called in the script. The one that has the legs going like this and comes up out of the ground with the yellow duck and the boy hiding there.
Oh, that one,
big for me was the leaves and the dirt that it's under. And all that, the way it's integrated into the space is what makes you feel, again, if it just slithered down a tree, it's just this monster kind of showing up versus something that you think, oh, it obviously like lives there, makes these sounds and waits for something to come by. And it's sort of blind, and it's got the feelers that come in, or it's in sort of half see, its eyes are white, so it's like can't look probably. All those ideas that you sort of build it on, for me, is like what slowly brings it to make it feel real. Mm-hmm. And then trying also in the animation, I made a list of things going, like it's important to me that the bugs like gets dirt in its eye, or it doesn't walk perfectly, or it doesn't move. Because as soon as the guys have to spend like days working on one shot, you find that things get too perfect for the moment, or the way it whips its feelers and stuff. You just feel like it's not. It should be a little clumsier and a little crappier, and it should tick. Something should tick there, or it should trip, or it should just do things that make it feel like that's what something like that would just be doing if it was there. So just trying to focus on all that stuff all the time and think what makes it feel more like it's there than it's just there to serve the movie moment,
Well, you nailed it. I'm looking forward to the pictures and the action figures when they come out as well too. I'll be collecting them. It's a very unconventional time right now for the world. How are you all planning? Are you planning on a celebration? The movie's coming out on October 16th. Are you planning on getting the group back to get the band back together to just,
We've been
do a little
talking about it. It's tricky. It's just a funny time. I think it's going to be kind of quiet. It's sad not to have a premiere and all be there to sort of go, we did this, and like we sort of get to like purge the work and go, there it is, but so there isn't really, and in a way it's not responsible to be all getting together to have a cool party. Although I'd love to, it's difficult, with like Dylan is a very strong personality and really cares about what the messaging he puts out there and what people take, and to like all hang out and have a cool thing and post stuff on Instagram. It reflects as something that, is not correct at the moment. And, again, like right now things are so divided. It's really tricky to know how people will take things, or you don't want to be projecting any kind of message of what, you think how things should be with the political situation or whatever.
Of course. Well,
so that's the tricky part. I'd love to, but I don't think we'll really do it. We'll probably all do like an Instagram live screening party where there'll be a bunch of us all on. I think that kind of is.
I think the live disappears though. I'm still figuring all this out, but
Carrie's our social media person.
I don't even really know how to do it. So I think the live disappears. So I think you have to do like a Instagram. Wait, maybe you're right. Maybe a live. One of them stays.
I think
someone will know. I'm not clued up, but
a live viewing party would be great.
I think that's
what I can assure you is Carrie and I think for our Friday movie night, we're gonna go out on video on demand and procure another copy of.
Are we watching it with the kids?
Watching it with the kids because. The more I think about it, it really it could work.
There's no swears.
Yeah,
I don't think.
There's some innuendo things in there, but I think it'll go
right
over their head.
At the beginning as well. I think sometimes if you're watching it with the kids, you might right at the beginning think, I don't know, because there's a bit of sexual stuff. Not that you see anything, but there's none of that in the rest of the movie. So it's really just something at the beginning in the bunker, but it's in the first minute or two. And then I think it's pretty clear, from there in terms of if you're worried about those sort of things.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We're excited to share this with our audience. Excited to see the warm reception that we're so confident it's going to receive. And for what it's worth, you're bringing a lot of joy to a lot of people in a really difficult time for them to be able to disconnect and just, for those 2 hours or so, that's
kind of the most important thing. And it's like a positive, hopeful movie. It's not trying hard. It's not projecting. For me and Dylan, it was an important thing that there's not an ego attached to it. This person's not trying to be the best person in the world and save the world or be the chosen one or something. There's just something about it that's doesn't have an ego and is quite human and relatable and hopeful, Yeah.
Totally.
Well, we look forward to catching it again on October 16th. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And we hope for your next project, you'll be able to come join us as well too. We'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, guys.
Right,
Great
thanks,
to chat.
Michael. Thanks, Brenda.
Bye.